The land of Egypt shimmered under the scorching sun. The heat seemed endless, blazing in every corner of the desert. The pyramids, monuments of ancient wisdom and power, stood firm amidst the sand, depicting a time of great history and mystery. The Nile River, like a ribbon of life, snaked through the land. On its banks, life flourished. People gathered to plant, harvest, and trade their goods. The river provided water, food, and livelihood, a blessing from nature that brought prosperity to the entire kingdom. But a darkness enveloped Egypt, not a darkness of the sky, but of oppression. The shadows of cruelty and injustice spread their wings across the land. The people suffered under the heavy hand of their rulers, their cries unheard. The Israelites, once guests, were now slaves, their pleas for freedom ignored, their bodies were bound in chains, and their hearts were filled with dreams of liberty. They worked tirelessly, their sweat and blood becoming the foundation of Egypt's buildings. A new force arrived, a force not of this world, but from heaven, a force bearing power and justice, ready to save the oppressed and punish the oppressors. Moses, an Israelite raised in Pharaoh's palace, returned from the desert carrying a message from God. "Let my people go." His eyes were filled with determination and his heart was full of faith. He was ready to face the most powerful man in Egypt to fight for the freedom of his people. But Pharaoh's heart remained hardened. His eyes were full of anger and pride, and his words were full of refusal. He could not accept that there was a force more powerful than him. According to the Bible, his heart was hard. His decisions were unchangeable and his actions were full of cruelty. His refusal brought more suffering to his people. He refused to acknowledge the God of Israel. His pride became a barrier to his ability to see the truth. His denial brought more disaster to his kingdom. And a struggle began, a battle of power between the gods of Egypt and the God of Israel. The gods of Egypt showed their power, but the God of Israel showed a greater power. The battle brought fear and wonder to the people. This struggle was shown through a series of terrifying events. 10 plagues that shook all of Egypt. The water of the Nile turned to blood, frogs swarmed the land, and locusts destroyed the crops. Each plague brought more suffering and fear. These plagues were not just natural disasters, they were signs, manifestations of God's power and his unwavering promise to his people. Each plague was a reminder of his power and his love for his people. The Israelites gained hope and their faith grew stronger. Their freedom was near and their dreams would become reality. The first blow fell upon the Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt. The river, worshipped as a god, turned to blood. The fish died, the air filled with a foul smell, and the Egyptians could no longer drink from their sacred river. This plague was a direct attack on the Egyptian god Hapi, the god of the Nile's annual flooding. The message was clear: the God of Israel was more powerful than the gods of Egypt. But Pharaoh's heart remained hardened, unmoved by the suffering of his people. Next, God sent swarms of creatures upon Egypt. These creatures brought great fear and distress to the people. Each one carried a unique kind of disaster. Frogs, symbols of fertility and rebirth, filled the land. The frogs were not only in the rivers and lakes, but also in the streets and homes of the people. They entered houses, kitchens, even Pharaoh's palace. No place was safe from their invasion. The frogs caused chaos and confusion in every corner of Egypt. The air was filled with their constant croaking. The noise caused by the frogs brought great distress to the people, who could no longer sleep peacefully. Next came lice, tiny insects that burrowed into the skin, causing intense itching. The lice spread quickly and no one escaped their attack. Following the lice came flies, darkening the sky and spreading disease. The flies carried various illnesses, causing great suffering to the people. These plagues struck the Egyptian goddess Heket, the frog-headed goddess of fertility, and Khepri, the scarab beetle god associated with creation. These gods, once believed to be powerful, seemed powerless in the face of the plagues sent by the God of Israel. The plagues intensified, bringing disease and suffering. A deadly disease spread among the livestock of Egypt. Cows, sheep, horses, all died, impacting Egypt's economy and challenging the authority of Apis, the bull god. Then, painful boils appeared on the skin of the Egyptians. Even the magicians and healers cried out in pain. This plague directly challenged the Egyptian goddess Serket, the goddess of healing and magic, depicted as a scorpion. The plagues showed that the God of Israel was in control, not the gods of Egypt. Part 5. Hail and Locusts. The heavens fall. It seemed the heavens themselves had turned against Egypt. A destructive hailstorm, unlike any the Egyptians had ever seen, struck the land. Crops were destroyed, trees uprooted, and buildings demolished. As if that wasn't enough, locusts descended upon Egypt, devouring everything the hail had spared. The sky turned black with insects, their hunger insatiable. These plagues directly challenged Nut, the sky goddess, and Seth, the god of storms and chaos. Part 6. Darkness descends. Palpable darkness. For 3 days, a thick darkness enveloped Egypt. People couldn't see their hands in front of their faces. This wasn't ordinary darkness, it was a darkness you could feel, suffocating, a darkness that chilled the heart. This plague was a direct affront to Ra, the sun god, the most powerful of the Egyptian gods. It showed that the God of Israel could even extinguish the sun, the source of life itself. The darkness was a physical manifestation of the fear and uncertainty gripping Egypt. Part 7. The final plague, a night of weeping. The 10th and final plague was the most severe. In one night the angel of death passed over Egypt, taking the lives of all the firstborn sons, from Pharaoh's own firstborn to the firstborn of the lowest slave. The cries of grief and despair were deafening. This final plague, the most personal and heartbreaking, finally broke Pharaoh's hardened heart. His own son was gone, and he could no longer bear the cries of his people. A journey to freedom. With a heavy heart, Pharaoh relented. He allowed the Israelites to leave Egypt, taking their possessions and their newfound freedom. The Exodus had begun. The parting of the Red Sea, another miraculous display of God's power, allowed the Israelites to escape the pursuing Egyptian army. The Israelites were free, but their journey to the Promised Land had just begun. Part 9. Conclusion. A legacy of faith and deliverance. Throughout history, the story of the Exodus has remained a powerful symbol of faith and deliverance. The 10 plagues of Egypt are a testament to the power of the God of Israel. These plagues were not merely punishments, but signs of divine intervention. Each plague exposed the weakness of the Egyptian gods and their rulers. They are a reminder that God will fight for his people, even against the most powerful adversaries. The plague served as a warning to the oppressors and a source of hope for the oppressed. The plagues also offer a timeless message of hope. Despite the darkness and suffering, God's light is always there to guide his people. The plagues provided hope that freedom would come. No matter how bad the situation, no matter how strong the oppressor, God is always with us, ready to deliver us from bondage and lead us to freedom. The story of the Exodus is a reminder that freedom is a gift bestowed by God upon his faithful followers. The story of Exodus, with its dramatic plagues and miraculous escape, continues to inspire people of faith around the world, reminding us that with God, all things are possible. The miracles of the Exodus prove that faith has the power to bring change and deliverance. In every trial, God is there to provide strength and hope.